On a quiet night, the clock was approaching midnight as Samer and his friends stood before the pyramids of Giza, the desert wind whispering around them like ancient murmurs. The place was empty. Only the sound of sand being dragged lightly and a distant dog barking, then falling silent, filled the air. The four got out of the car. Mazen said, staring at the Great Pyramid, "Imagine, these stones are over 4,000 years old. How many secrets do they hide?" Khalid smiled nervously. "And you insist we discover the secrets at night?" Mazen didn't answer. He was staring at a part of the pyramid away from the lights, where the darkness seemed deeper than usual, as if it wasn't just the absence of light, but the presence of something else. They began walking over the sand. Every step made a soft scraping sound, but strangely, Samer felt as though other footsteps were following them. He stopped suddenly and turned. No one. Only the sand and their four footprints. They continued until Yahya spotted something among the dunes, a low stone opening, half buried in the sand, like an ancient mouth waiting for someone to enter. They approached slowly. Yahya whispered, "This wasn't in the tourist photos." Khalid shone his phone's flashlight into the entrance. The passage was narrow, sloping downward slightly, and the walls were unnaturally smooth, as if polished carefully. A cold breeze blew from inside, unnaturally cold for the hot desert. Samer tried to joke, "Maybe it's an ancient air conditioner." No one laughed. They entered one by one. With the first step inside, they felt the outside world vanish. No wind, no desert, nothing. Only their breaths and the echo of their footsteps. After a few meters, Mazen noticed something strange. He whispered, "Don't move." On the left wall appeared a long shadow, stretching like a fifth person standing among them. But on the ground, there were only 4 shadows. Samer raised his hand slowly. His own shadow moved, but the 5th shadow stayed still. Then it began moving on its own, gliding slowly along the wall as if observing them. Khalid shivered. "It's a reflection. Must be a reflection." But the light was steady, and suddenly the shadow disappeared. Silence fell, so heavy their heartbeats seemed audible. Then they heard a faint sound, like stones scraping stone, coming from deep within the passage. Yahya whispered, "Should we go back?" But at that moment, a grain of sand fell from the ceiling in front of them, then another. Then sand began to fall lightly, as if the place were breathing. Samer suddenly felt something cold brush past his ear, like a nearby breath. He turned quickly. No one was there. But at the end of the passage, in the darkness, it seemed something was standing there. Something tall. Then it vanished. The heavy steps continued, approaching one of the open corridors inside the pyramids. They weren't fast, just slow, deliberate, as if their owner feared nothing. Darkness surrounded them. No light, no clear exit. Samer whispered shakily, "Don't move. Maybe it's just an echo." But this time it was no echo. From deep within the corridor, something began to appear. At first, a long shadow on the ground. Then pale, barefoot legs, as if no blood had passed through them in centuries. Then a very thin body, wearing an old white robe, dirty at the bottom from the dark sand. And finally, the face. Expressionless, skin pale as stone, eyes completely black with no white. The 4 froze in place. The man emerged from the corridor slowly, stopping a few meters in front of them. He made no sound while walking. The steps they heard weren't from his feet. He smiled faintly. But his teeth weren't normal. Slightly long, uneven. Then he spoke. His voice didn't just come from his mouth. It echoed from the walls around them. You were not invited. The ground beneath them trembled. Khalid tried to turn his phone on again, but it lit up for only a moment, revealing the man's face. At that moment, they saw something horrifying. His face wasn't fixed. For a moment, it looked like a crying child's face, then an old man's, then back to normal. The phone went dark instantly. The shadows on the walls began moving violently, as if dozens of people were running around them, but the hall was empty. Mazen whispered, "Who are you?" The man didn't answer. He slowly raised his hand and pointed to the ground. Suddenly, the sand at their feet began to move, as if something beneath it was trying to emerge. Small black hands pushed through the sand, then vanished. Yahya screamed, "Run!" They dashed toward the passage they came through, but when they reached it, there was no passage, only a solid stone wall. The path had vanished. They turned slowly. The white man wasn't there, but his voice was very close, behind them. The pyramid chooses. Samer felt something brush his shoulder, a hand, icy cold. He looked down. The white man was standing right behind him, closer than he should be. There was almost no distance between them. His eyes were exactly level with Samer's. Then he spoke calmly, terrifyingly. Every 100 years. 4. Suddenly, the temperature dropped further. Some stones in the wall cracked, revealing a new passage behind them that hadn't been there a moment ago. The man pointed to it. Enter. And for the first time, they heard the children's cries clearly, not from afar, but inside the new passage, as if something awaited them there. The new passage opened before them as if the stones themselves had split by the command of the white man. Narrow at first, it gradually widened as they advanced. Behind them, they could no longer see the hall, as if it had been swallowed. The children's cries became clearer, but no longer normal. They were intermittent, distorted, sometimes mixed with whispers in languages they didn't understand. Khalid whispered, "Do we walk of our own will, or does he lead us?" No one answered. Suddenly, the passage ended at a huge stone door, half open. Samer pushed it slowly. They entered a room completely unlike anything they had seen. It was vast, the ceiling unusually high. The walls were covered in ancient hieroglyphs, but not ordinary ones. They depicted 4 young men in the same hall, a tall man in white in front of them, and small shadows surrounding them. Yahya whispered hoarsely, "That's us." Mazen approached one wall. The details were so precise that one depiction showed a wristwatch resembling Samer's. Strangest of all, the drawing wasn't old. The stone edges were still sharp, as if carved minutes ago. Beneath it were hieroglyphic symbols deeply engraved. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and the sand on the ground began moving slowly, as if the room were breathing. Then something froze their blood. The drawings began moving, slowly, detaching from the wall. The small shadows in the drawings moved first, stepping into the room. Not full bodies, just 3-dimensional shadows, black, child-sized. They stood in the corners, surrounding them. Then the crying resumed, but this time it wasn't coming from the air. It came from the walls themselves. Thin cracks appeared in the stone, and from them emerged small, dark fingers, feeling the air. Khalid screamed and stepped back. Suddenly, the stone door slammed behind them with force. The room shook. The white man appeared in the center of the hall, but this time he hadn't come from a passage. He seemed to form from the shadows themselves. "Memory never dies," he said quietly, pointing to one wall. The sand suddenly shifted, revealing a hidden stone panel in the floor. In its center, 4 human-shaped cavities, exactly the size of their bodies. "Every century, the door opens. Every century, the drawing is renewed," said the man. The small shadows slowly approached them. Step, step. No sound, but the air grew heavier. Samer felt a small hand grasp his fingers. It was icy, damp. He looked down. A child stood by his side, featureless, only empty eyes. Then the same voice whispered, "Stay with us." Suddenly the ground beneath them weakened, as if about to collapse, and the stone cavities began glowing with a faint reddish light. The white man raised his hand. Just as the ground was about to swallow them, everything went dark. When the red light suddenly went out, the darkness was thick, heavy, as if the air itself had turned into a choking black substance. They couldn't hear their screams. The sound seemed swallowed before leaving their throats. Then their hearing slowly returned. But they were no longer in the room with the drawings. They lay on cold sand, deep within the pyramids. The ceiling was so low it barely allowed standing, and the walls were rough, eroded, older than anything they had seen. Khalid stood shakily. "Where are we?" No one answered. A faint blue light came from the end of the corridor. They walked slowly toward it. Each step sank into dark sand, not yellow, almost black. As they approached the light, they froze. In the middle of the room was a massive stone coffin, open. It wasn't decorated, nor royal. Simple, heavy, seemingly made to contain something that should not be seen. The faint blue light emanated from inside. Samer whispered shakily, "Don't go near." But something in Mazen's eyes changed. He stepped toward the coffin, then another step. "They're calling me," he said in a strange voice, not his own. Yahya shouted, "Mazen, come back!" But Mazen didn't stop. He reached the edge of the coffin and looked inside. He froze, then his body trembled. Samer cautiously looked too. There was no body, no mummy. Only an endless darkness like a bottomless pit. From within the darkness, movement. Children's cries returned, now coming from inside the coffin. Suddenly, a small black hand shot out, gripping Mazen's wrist with unnatural strength. He screamed. Samer tried to grab him, but another hand, then a third, then dozens of small hands emerged from the darkness, pulling Mazen inside. He screamed.